Mel Gibson's gun breakdown scene wasn't rehearsed. Director Richard Donner let the camera roll for 8 minutes, while Gibson sobbed with a real loaded prop weapon. These are the 20 hidden details in Lethal Weapon you completely missed. Number 1. The iconic Riggs-Murtaugh partnership wasn't the original plan. Warner Brothers wanted Richard Pryor paired with Clint Eastwood for screenwriter Shane Black's script. Studio executives envisioned a straightforward buddy cop formula with established bankable stars. When Pryor declined and Eastwood passed, the studio reluctantly settled on Gibson and Danny Glover. Producer Joel Silver pushed for the younger pairing despite executive resistance. The famous "I'm too old for this nonsense" line was actually a studio compromise. Executives wanted reassurance that the age dynamic would play for laughs, not drama. Glover knew the line was added to satisfy Warner Brothers executives who didn't trust Black's darker vision for the film. Number 2. The film's Christmas setting wasn't a creative choice, but pure budget desperation. Production designer J. Michael Riva bought clearance holiday decorations because postseason sales meant massive savings on Joel Silver's tight $15 million budget. Filming took place during scorching Los Angeles heat, with temperatures regularly exceeding 95 degrees. Watch the outdoor scenes carefully and you'll notice visible sweat on actors' faces during supposedly cold December weather. Crew members wore short sleeves between takes, while actors suffered in winter coats. Riva's production notes document buying 17 boxes of discounted tinsel from 3 different drugstore chains. The economic pressure was real since Warner Brothers had already slashed Richard Donner's original $18 million budget proposal. The summer heat created insurance complications that nearly shut down production. Number 3. Gary Busey's intimidating performance as villain Mr. Joshua came with genuine danger. Busey refused to work with stunt coordinator Bob Miner during fight choreography, insisting on performing all physical combat himself without safety protocols. He actually injured 3 stuntmen during rehearsals, causing insurance complaints that reached Richard Donner. Watch the final lawn fight sequence closely, and the contact between Busey and Gibson is completely real, with no stunt doubles and minimal safety padding. Notice Gibson's genuine fear reactions during close-ups. That's not acting technique, because Gibson later admitted in DVD commentary that he was genuinely afraid of Busey's unpredictability. The insurance company threatened to remove Busey from the production after the 3rd stuntman injury. Joel Silver intervened to keep him on set. Number 4. The torture sequence where Riggs gets electrocuted while soaking wet used actual low-voltage electrical current. Gibson insisted on authentic physical reactions rather than acting the pain, overruling safety coordinator protests documented in production reports. The electrical apparatus delivered real shocks through the water, causing involuntary muscle spasms visible in the final footage. Watch Gibson's body movements during that scene, and those aren't performance choices but genuine physiological responses to electrical stimulation. The safety coordinator filed 3 separate complaints with Joel Silver's production office, warning that even low voltage posed risk of health complications. Gibson's interview in the 1992 documentary reveals he demanded higher voltage during takes because he felt the reactions looked fake. Richard Donner reviewed dailies and Warner Brothers. Executives threatened production shutdown over liability concerns. Number 5. The Murtaugh family home wasn't a constructed set, but belonged to production manager Jim Brubaker, who rented his actual residence for the entire shoot. His family temporarily relocated to a hotel for 6 weeks, while the crew transformed their real home into Roger Murtaugh's domestic space. The furniture you see is Brubaker's genuine belongings, not prop department rentals. The kitchen was fully functional, with real appliances used during filming of breakfast and dinner sequences. Look closely at the family photos on the walls, and those aren't hired models or stock images, but Brubaker's actual family members. His children appear in multiple background frames throughout various scenes. Production notes indicate this arrangement saved approximately $40,000 in set construction costs, money Joel Silver desperately needed for action sequences. Number 6. The pool dive scene where Riggs tackles a suspect through plate glass wasn't just spectacular action, but professional revenge. Bob Miner wanted to fire the stuntman after previous mistakes, but Richard Donner protected him by giving him the film's most dangerous showcase moment. The dive involved crashing through actual vintage glass in a single take with no CGI enhancement. The stuntman's documentary interview revealed Donner personally designed the sequence to prove the performer's value to the production. That single shot required 6 hours of setup and 17 crew members. Joel Silver initially refused to approve the stunt, requiring Donner to personally guarantee coverage. Number 7. Gibson's iconic iconic mullet hairstyle wasn't a calculated character choice. He showed up to the first production meeting with the haircut left over from his previous film Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and Richard Donner hated it immediately. Rather than demanding Gibson change it or cover it with a wig, Donner made the unprofessional appearance a deliberate plot point about Riggs' psychological instability. However, this decision allowed the film to save $8,000 in the makeup budget. Warner Brothers executives saw early footage and demanded Gibson get a professional haircut, threatening to halt production. Joel Silver refused, arguing the messy hair communicated Riggs' mental deterioration better than any dialogue. Number 8. The desert suffering sequence was originally 3 minutes long before MPAA censorship demands. The ratings board required removal of 40% of individual frames to avoid an X rating. Editor Stuart Baird's editing notes, preserved in Warner Brothers archives, document specific shot removals frame by frame. Watch the final sequence carefully, and you'll notice visible jump cuts where entire segments were extracted. The violence you see represented such extreme content that nearly half couldn't be shown to American audiences. Baird's interview and DVD commentary reveals he fought to preserve the sequence's emotional impact while satisfying censorship requirements. The original uncut footage exists in Richard Donner's private collection, but has never been released publicly. Warner Brothers submitted the film 4 separate times before the MPAA approved an R rating. Number 9. The dog providing comic relief throughout the film was Richard Donner's actual pet, completely untrained for film work. Sam the dog kept wandering off set during takes, forcing crew members to chase him between camera setups. Scenes were literally rewritten around the dog's unpredictable behavior, with accidents kept in the final edit because they felt authentic. Watch the dog carefully in any scene, and he looks directly at the camera crew multiple times, showing genuine confusion about the production environment. Production assistant reports document daily struggles corralling the animal during bigger takes. Gibson bonded with the dog immediately, and Donner spontaneously rewrote scenes to include the pet. The dog passed from natural causes during post-production, before the film's theatrical release. Joel Silver dedicated the final cut to Sam's memory. Number 10. The climactic helicopter crash wasn't planned destruction because the pilot actually lost control and the resulting crash was a genuine accident. Insurance claims filed after the incident document that crew members evacuated the filming area when the helicopter descended unpredictably. The FAA launched an investigation into the crash, reviewing flight logs and mechanical reports. Watch the background during the explosion sequence, and you can see crew members visibly running away from the crash site, not actors performing choreographed panic. The footage was salvaged and incorporated into the final cut because reshooting would have required another helicopter and exceeded Joel Silver's already strained budget. Richard Donner's production reports indicate the crash delayed filming by 3 days, while investigators examined the wreckage. Warner Brothers' legal department settled the insurance claim quietly. Number 11. Danny Glover almost quit mid-production over creative clashes with Richard Donner about character direction. He walked off set 3 separate times, forcing Joel Silver to mediate disputes and rewrite script pages overnight. Production schedules show unexplained gaps where Glover refused to report to set until Donner agreed to script modifications. Watch Glover's expressions during car scenes closely, and that's genuine frustration bleeding through the performance, not character work. His anger about production decisions manifested as authentic tension in scenes that were supposed to play as light comedy. The famous "I'm too old for this nonsense" line took on unintended meaning because it was literally Glover's complaint about brutal production conditions. Crew interviews revealed screaming matches between actor and director. Silver's mediation prevented complete production collapse at Warner Brothers. Studio. Number 12. The iconic building jump where Riggs leaps onto an airbag was a failed stunt kept in the final cut. The stuntman missed the landing bag on the first attempt, breaking 3 ribs on impact. Watch the landing carefully, and it looks wrong because it was genuinely wrong, capturing a real injury moment. The stuntman's interview from the 2006 documentary reveals he was hospitalized mid-shoot but returned to work 3 days later. Stuart Baird chose the failed take because the authentic pain reaction felt more visceral than successful attempts filmed later. Notice how the body position during landing looks awkward and uncontrolled. Production reports document the hospital visit and temporary filming suspension while Bob Miner redesigned the sequence. Richard Donner and Warner Brothers executives tried to suppress information about the injury. Number 13. Screenwriter Shane Black makes a cameo appearance as a corpse in the opening party scene. Black demanded continuous on-set presence during filming, and Richard Donner gave him a bit part as a dead body to satisfy the request. The role lasted exactly 3 frames of screen time, barely visible in the final cut. Watch the scene where Black's face is clearly visible among the party casualties. According to Black's interview in entertainment documentaries, he wrote that specific death scene with himself in mind, intentionally creating a cameo opportunity. The joke was entirely private because Black never expected anyone to notice his appearance. Production notes reveal Black was paid standard extra wages for the role, despite being the highest paid screenwriter on Joel Silver's project. Number 14. The substance bust house used for the LAPD raid sequence was an actual recently busted substance location. The property still contained hidden compartments and structural modifications made by real dealers. LAPD consultation brought the production team to the authentic location, which J. Michael Riva used instead of constructing an artificial set. Watch the background carefully during raid sequences and you'll see actual police evidence markers, not prop department creations. The real tape, spray painted markings, and structural damage were preserved from the genuine bust. Location scouting reports document controversy over using the real crime scene, crew members uncomfortable filming in a space with actual violence. The property owners attempted to sue Warner Brothers during the film's theatrical release. Richard Donner and Joel Silver settled out of court. Number 15. Riggs's trailer explosion used real high explosives and the blast was miscalculated. Mel Gibson stood 20 feet closer than the designated safe distance when the pyrotechnics detonated. Watch his reaction during the explosion, and that's genuine shock and fear, not performance. The fire marshal filed a report documenting the safety violation and production shut down for 2 days while insurance investigators examined the incident. Gibson's interview reveals he felt the heat on his face and thought he might be seriously injured. The explosion was designed to produce a fireball reaching 12 feet high, but the actual blast exceeded 20 feet. Richard Donner's crew members visible in behind-scenes footage showed genuine panic responses. Joel Silver's pyrotechnic supervisor was removed from the set during production. Number 16. The climactic lawn fight between Riggs and Mr. Joshua nearly killed both actors. Gibson and Gary Busey both refused stunt doubles, insisting on performing actual full-contact combat for the scene. Busey broke Gibson's ribs during the third take, an injury that was covered up to avoid production delays. Watch Gibson's movement carefully after a specific punch midway through the fight, and his body mechanics completely change, showing visible pain responses. The hospital visit happened immediately after filming wrapped that day, with Gibson returning to set the next morning despite medical advice. Richard Donner and Joel Silver threatened to replace both actors if they continued refusing stunt coordination. Visible bruising appears in scenes filmed immediately after by cinematographer Steven Goldblatt. Number 17. The film's ending was reshot multiple times with different outcomes. Shane Black's original script had Riggs dying in the final confrontation. A dark conclusion, Warner Brothers immediately rejected. The studio mandated a happy ending with Riggs joining the Murtaugh family for Christmas dinner. 3 entirely different versions were filmed and tested with preview audiences who remained divided on which ending worked best. Watch the final Christmas lights shot closely, and those are wrong season bulbs because the ending was filmed in April, months after principal photography wrapped. Black publicly disowned the compromise ending in multiple interviews, calling it a betrayal of the character's psychological journey. Richard Donner's test audience scorecards preserved in studio archives show the darker ending scored higher with male viewers. Joel Silver approved the final theatrical version. Number 18. During the shootout climax, Danny Glover's gun jammed and the malfunction stayed in the final cut. Watch Glover's face during that moment, and the confusion and frustration are completely genuine, not performance choices. Stuart Baird kept the take because the authentic reaction felt more real than perfectly executed alternatives. Glover improvised his recovery, working around the mechanical failure at the moment. Production reports indicate the budget overrun meant accepting imperfect takes rather than spending additional days on reshoots. The film was already $2 million over Joel Silver's budget, and Warner Brothers refused additional financing for pickups. Glover's interview reveals he thought Richard Donner would cut the take and was surprised to see it in theaters. The gun malfunction happened during the 7th take of a 12-take sequence. Number 19. The iconic Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton soundtrack was the 3rd attempt after 2 previous composers failed. The original composer was fired after submitting work the studio rejected as too dark. The second composer quit mid-production due to creative differences with Richard Donner. Kamen was hired only 3 weeks before the final mix deadline. Production notes reveal the desperation behind this last-minute replacement. Listen carefully to the opening sequence, and portions of temp music from James Horner's Alien score are still partially present in the final audio mix. The famous saxophone theme was an improvisation by Clapton during a single recording session. Kamen's documentary interview reveals Clapton showed up without prepared material and created the melody spontaneously. Joel Silver worked with minimal orchestral resources at Warner Brothers recording facilities. Number 20. Shane Black was already writing Lethal Weapon 2 before the first film released theatrically. Warner Brothers had zero confidence in the January 1987 dump month release date, treating the film as a mid-budget throwaway. Studio executives commissioned a sequel script as insurance against commercial failure, assuming franchise potential was the only way to recoup production costs. Black's salary for the sequel jumped from $250,000 to $2.5 million after the first film's surprise box office performance. The original Lethal Weapon grossed $120 million worldwide, shocking executives who expected modest returns. Watch the final shot of Riggs' holstered gun, and it mirrors the opening suicide scene. That circular visual motif was Black's deliberate setup for sequel continuation. Richard Donner and Joel Silver created a franchise despite studio opposition. The entire cop psychological angle that made Lethal Weapon iconic was never in Shane Black's original script. Warner Brothers executives demanded the darkness be added to differentiate the film from standard buddy cop comedies. The movie audiences know was an accident created by desperate compromise. Which hidden detail surprised you most, and what film should we open next?